One night, I was deep asleep when a sound outside my window woke me up. Naturally, I was scared someone was trying to rob us, but it was actually something way more irritating. I opened the window and I saw my sister with her boyfriend. It made me feel kind of jealous, and I decided to be petty and tell on her. I quietly went to my mom's room and woke her up and started telling her that my sister was outside with some random guy. "Nonsense," my mom snapped. "Your sister is fast asleep in her room." I insisted, and we ended up going to my sister's room and saw that the bed was empty. There was a sudden bang downstairs, and both of us ran to find the source of it. It came from the kitchen, and we found my sister in there. There was glass all over the floor. She said she dropped a glass while getting herself some water. My mom was furious and started shouting at her. "Do you know what time it is? You were out with your boyfriend, weren't you? Don't try to deny it either. Your sister saw you." My mom started calling her names and getting really mean. But my sister didn't change her story. In the end, Mom grounded her for a whole month and stormed upstairs without another word. My sister looked at me with such rage in her eyes. I thought she was going to attack me. She hissed and turned away. The next day, my sister wasn't any happier. Every time she passed me, she glared at me like she was trying to kill me with her eyes. I wanted to get away, so I decided to go to the grocery store with my mom. When we arrived, while she was busy finding all the stuff on her list, I decided to have a walk around by myself. I got a little distracted and accidentally walked into the back of a man. I was ready to apologize, but when he turned around, I saw it was my dad. I was sure he should be at work. Maybe he was on a break or something? "Sorry, Dad. I wasn't looking where I was going." Dad looked a bit startled for a moment. He looked around in all directions nervously. It was really strange. But finally, he seemed to relax and smiled at me. "No need to apologize, my princess. Hey, how about we head back home?" "Well, Mom's here. Should I go get her?" I asked. No, he said pleasantly. "It's fine. I saw her before, and she wanted me to take you home. She'll catch up with us." Maybe I'd been bugging Mom? I didn't know, but I followed Dad outside to the parking lot anyway. Except, it all got even weirder. He had a totally new car I'd never seen before. "Did you get a new car, Dad?" "Yes. I actually bought it this morning. Do you like it? Get in quick. Your mom won't be happy if she has to wait." "What on earth are you doing? Get away from my daughter, you freak! I swear I'll call the police!" I ran back towards my mom. "Mom, what's wrong with you? Everyone's looking. I was just going home with Dad." I turned to talk to Dad, but he was speeding out of the parking lot. What was happening? My mom was furious, demanding an explanation about why I was getting into a stranger's car. She wouldn't listen to me when I tried to say it was just Dad. Then she dropped a bombshell on me. "Honey, that wasn't your dad. Your dad's at work. That man didn't even look like him," Mom said. I stared at her, wondering if it was all one big joke. But Mom looked deadly serious, and I started shaking and crying. What was wrong with me? They looked exactly the same, I was sure. After we got home and talked about it, my mom was so concerned that she decided to take me to a doctor. The doctor gave me a lot of weird tests, and I had to talk to other medical professionals too. But it only took a few days for the psychiatrist to diagnose me. Prosopagnosia. What a mouthful, right? To put it simply, I suffer from face blindness. I couldn't tell different faces apart from each other. People could easily end up looking the same to me. I couldn't believe it. I'd never had this problem before, or so I thought. I started to wonder whether I had confused people in the past, and it just hadn't been an issue until I was in danger, like at the grocery store. Unfortunately, there was no cure, and I was told I'd have to learn to live with it. My mom told everyone the news. I could only stand there and try not to cry. My mom had taken the news really well, and was as sympathetic as she could be. The rest of my family? Not so much. My sister scoffed and rolled her eyes. "I could have told you she was crazy. You didn't need to pay anyone," she said. My dad was the worst, though. He smashed his glass on the floor and wouldn't even look at me. He looked so disappointed. My mom told him to calm down and think about his daughter. "And what about me?" he roared. "My daughter is abnormal. Do you know how embarrassing that is?" I ran off crying, but I could hear the entire fight from my room. My dad was yelling about how he never loved me and always knew there was something wrong with me. My mom told him to shut up and that I was just special, but he was too stupid to notice. My sister didn't say anything, but I could hear her laughing. At least someone was getting a kick out of this. In fact, she seemed pretty happy about the whole thing. At least I had my mom, or so I thought. My dad and sister quickly ganged up on me. My sister cut her hair like Mom and wore her clothes to confuse me. And it worked. The next day, she walked over to me in her mom costume with an evil smirk on her face. She came close and whispered in my ear, "Hey, idiot. Guess what? I love your sister more than you." I started to cry hysterically and asked her why. "You've just always been such a disappointment to me," she said. She started to laugh in a way that seemed oddly familiar, but I couldn't place it. Before I had time to really think, Dad walked in. I told Dad that I was sorry for everything, but he just rolled his eyes at me. "It's fine, I guess. I always knew you'd be a problem," he said. "By the way, since there are no secrets between us anymore, I guess it's time we told you about our open relationship." Pointing at my mom, he said, "No need to tell her when other women are here. We all agreed to it.
Not that you could tell your own mother apart from some random woman off the street.
He and my sister both laughed before leaving the room. These people were stupidly evil. Shamefully, I really thought it was my mom who spoken to me like that, and I felt so betrayed and hurt that I didn't want to speak to her again. Every time my mom tried to approach me over the next few weeks, I avoided her. I couldn't take her insulting me again. Mom worked every night, so not seeing her wasn't particularly challenging. And from then on, every single night, my dad brought a new girl home. He made me stay in my room and told me my mom was totally fine with it all. Of course, it was all a lie. My sister would even put on her mom disguise and tell me that she didn't mind the random girls in the house. I felt trapped in a nightmare. I just accepted things as they were. Even though I was angry at my mom back then, I still had guilt deep inside me. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't quite figure it out. My mom had never been mean to me before, and I just couldn't fully believe she'd be okay with Dad bringing girls home. I needed to know the truth. I confronted my dad about it and told him he should stop. He got annoyed and told me I didn't understand. He asked me how I could even tell they were different girls since I was face blind. I can still tell voices apart, I said sadly.
If you say so,
he said before walking back to his room to go to bed. I felt defeated at first, but then something dawned on me. I may not be able to trust my eyes, but I could trust my ears. I just needed to listen to voices more carefully. With a little practice, I could be normal again. I was jumping for joy when I saw something that nearly broke my brain.
Why are you jumping, honey?
One of my moms asked. There were 2 moms in the room. I must have gone white as a sheet as one of the moms told me I should go to bed and get some rest. Then she left. The mom who stayed behind started laughing. I see you just noticed my little haircut, you idiot. It was my sister. It was you the whole time? I shouted.
Was it? Maybe sometimes. It's not like you can even tell the difference,
my sister said. I was going to fix this whole mess. We all sat down and ate breakfast the next day, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't tell them apart. Their voices were different for sure, but I couldn't pin a voice to a person. My sister definitely had a distinct laugh, but her regular speaking voice wasn't much different from Mom's. And when I couldn't tell who was speaking, I couldn't train myself to know who was who. But then I thought, sure, their voices were similar, but their personalities weren't. That was it. My sister was rotten to the core, you see. And not just with people. My sister was also very mean to animals. She hated puppies and she hated kittens. Not like my mom and me. I decided to borrow the neighbor's puppy for a few hours. When I walked into my house, I could already tell my plan was working. One of my moms looked over with disgust and walked out. The other ran right up and started petting the dog. I took the next few hours to memorize my mom's voice as she played with the dog. The longer I listened, the more I could identify unique things in her voice. I could hear the difference between her voice and my sister's, not to mention the girls my dad brought home. I decided to sit down and have a conversation with my real mom. I told her all about the woman and the mean comments and told her if she knew about any of it.
I didn't,
she said with a serious look on her face. The next day, I was surprised to see her sitting on the couch with my sister, looking nervous next to her. She told me that she decided to stay home for her night shift. It was only about 20 minutes before Dad walked in with his new date. My mom was so angry, she screamed at the woman to leave and started shouting at my dad. She threw a few things at him and told him to get out and never come back. My sister started crying and apologizing, saying that Dad had forced her to go along with everything. I didn't believe a word of it and told my mom that my sister had enjoyed tormenting me. My sister, who usually thought she was so cool and scary, was reduced to a blubbering mess on the ground, begging my mom not to kick her out. My mom agreed, but on one condition. She picked up a bag of stuff from behind the couch and told my sister to follow her. My mom took my sister into the bathroom, and she came out with a green mohawk. Perfect, my mom said. Now Susan will always be able to tell us apart. My sister was humiliated, but it was true. I would definitely know who was who now. This should have been a happy ending for me, but my mom did have one flaw. She would never be able to live without a man in her life. And it wasn't long before one showed up. As expected, my mom brought home a new guy a few days later. And he really was something. He wore tattered old clothes and had a tattoo of a chicken wing on his shoulder. I had no idea what my mom saw in him, but maybe my sister knew. See, whenever my mom went on her night shift, my sister and my mom's new boyfriend would disappear for hours. At first, I thought it was great to be left alone. Then, I realized it was very suspicious. I told Mom about it, and she kicked him out and sent my sister to live with my dad at the motel he'd been staying at. A few weeks later, Dad came back, full of apologies and begging to be taken back. My mom crumbled. I guess she really couldn't survive without a man, so she agreed to work on their relationship. I asked my dad where my sister was, and he just looked confused.
What are you talking about?
He said. I felt super bad. She was a mean person, but there were worse people in the world, like the man who tried to kidnap me. I didn't want her to get hurt. I decided to look for her myself. I told my mom I was worried, but she only seemed to care about my dad now. I wondered about my mom's ex, the weird guy with the chicken wing tattoo. Maybe it was something to do with him? I went to the police station, and an officer told me we could go to the man's house and see if my sister was with him. I tried to explain my face blindness problem and that I wouldn't actually know if the girl was her. And what if she didn't want to admit who she was? The officer wasn't sympathetic and told me to deal with it on my own in that case. He said that runaway kids weren't his problem.
Go play Sherlock Holmes if you want,
he said, and walked away from me. Luckily, it was pretty easy to find the guy's address. His house was exactly what I expected it to be. It was a total mess, and there was loud music booming everywhere. There were also lots of women inside. The door was unlocked, so I let myself in. There were so many women with strange haircuts and outfits, I didn't know where to look. I shouted for everyone's attention, and they all looked at me. Hey, Rachel, if you're here, I'm sorry, and you can come home now. Forgive me, please, sis. Say something, I pleaded. One of the girls approached me and said,
"What are you talking about, idiot? There's no Rachel here. Can you just leave?"
I went back home and asked my mom for help again because I couldn't find my sister anywhere. That's when my mom finally snapped.
"Honey, I've tried to be patient with you. I just can't take this anymore,"
Mom said. Take what? I asked, confused.
"All these games! It's not funny. You almost cost me my marriage, and for what? Now all of this?"
Mom explained. What do you mean? I asked.
"You don't have a sister!"
My mom yelled, holding her head in frustration. What was she talking about? Of course I did! I pulled out my cell phone and checked my sister's number. She hadn't answered before, but maybe I could leave a voice message? Except now it said the number didn't exist. I ran over to my room and looked for any of her stuff, or photos, or something, but there was nothing. Her room was totally empty. I turned my computer on and searched frantically for her social media accounts, but they were all gone. I even ran into my mom's room and pulled out the family photo albums. She wasn't in a single picture. I was crazy, wasn't I? I'd been crazy the whole time. Or maybe there was something else happening here. Whatever it was, it had to be something dark.